about the other team in the NFC East, as on the tagline says Jayden take over, then that's with Jayden Daniels and the Washington Commanders, because how incredible have they looked so far, Johnny? I mean, they're the best team in the NFC East at the minute. They are. They've got to be. They are. I'm going to throw some stuff out that 82.1% completion percentage for Jayden Daniels after the first four games is the highest completion percentage by any player during a 4-game stretch with a minimum 100 passing attempts. I've got a few more stats in, but I'm going to fire them thick and fast at you. Because this team is just a joy to watch. I mean, how many years have the Commanders felt just in damsel and in distress and just been really, really poor? And, they've drafted Jayden Daniels at the number 2 spot this year coming out of LSU. And a lot of people said how good he could be in this NFL. I think there was that worry because, he is a run-first style quarterback in the sense. But at the same time, he has got that arm and he's proving that. And, how are you feeling about the Commanders at the minute?
Absolutely all in now, I think, on the Commanders. I think, like a lot of people, we had, not just about Jayden Daniels, but I think about this team. They have been, I suppose, a laughingstock of a franchise over recent years, particularly with, their ownership, their stadium, some of their quarterback disasters, I suppose, in recent years, whether that, is their fault or not. It was, a real comical show in Washington, and they look so much unlike. They look like the Detroit Lions, when they first came on the scene in terms of, wow, this is a new team that is going to win a lot of football matches and could go really far in this league. And Jayden Daniels, another stat. What was it? He's led more passing drives this year than he has in completions. I think he only has 19 completions and is the most accurate quarterback in the NFL at the moment. I think this weekend we saw, a bit of a different play, and we're starting to see the whole package. I think with Daniels, who's throwing, a lot more, into the middle of the field. I think that's, obviously we know how good he is with his feet. I'm looking forward to seeing, the deep ball with Terry. He's obviously got a good connection already with Terry McLaurin. I think that's something we could see in the next few weeks. But I think he looks very mature, and he's processing his mistakes when he makes them. And it just looks very mature for a rookie quarterback, and that's obviously something that the Commanders will absolutely love. I mean, I've got to say, not just about Daniels. We can talk him as much as we want, but Cliff Kingsbury has obviously had made a huge impact on the way the Commanders are playing. I think I mentioned similarities with the Lions, but the Commanders' run game has completely evolved. Brian Robinson alongside Jayden Daniels, and the variety of players who are getting involved in this offense. I saw something, I can't remember the number, but the amount of players that Daniels is getting involved is really impressive. So early on into his career. I mean, where can this go? If you look at the teams that they've played, they probably haven't come up against, on paper, a good defense. And they're coming up against the Browns and the Ravens. I think that's going to be, the next 2 weeks is going to be their test. But with their divisional rivals, the Cowboys, Eagles, and the Giants, 2 defenses who have been really poor to start the season, there's no reason why this Commanders team can't be the Texans of last year and storm to the division and perhaps get a playoff win. I think this is the start of something very, very exciting for the Commanders, and I mean, very excited for Commanders fans because they've obviously gone through a lot, as the other teams that I've just mentioned, and they deserve their bit of attention because they've got a real superstar in Jayden Daniels, who's going to be there and entertaining them for so many years to come.
I am going to have to put the brakes on a little bit with Jayden Daniels and the Washington Commanders, though. But I will give so I'll give you some cool stuff first about him, and then I'm going to say the sort of the negatives, because you've I think you've been quite harsh on some of the defenses on this NFC East, and maybe I haven't looked at this Commanders defense, because that's what's also pretty impressive with Jayden Daniels. But he has passes under 15 air yards. He has 35 successful completions in a row, and Next Gen Stats said that there was a 0.02% chance of that happening with him, and he smashed that. It is also the second most efficient offense since 2000, only behind that New England Patriots offense of 2007. He's had 23 scoring drives to 4 points, and you're right about 19 incompletions as well. He's running away with rookie year, but the problem, but also what's good is, in spite of is statistically a terrible defense, he's doing all of this as well, because his defense has not done him any favors. They're currently 25th in the whole of NFL. They've allowed the most passing touchdowns in the NFL, 10. They've not had an interception yet. They're 23rd in rushing yards. They have only allowed 3 rushing touchdowns, but they've allowed for 882 passing yards over there, which is 22nd. So it's not like he's had help from his defense to get them into a winning position. He has had to play a bit of hero ball, but he's done that very well. And Dan Quinn, who came in as the head coach this year, a very, very good defensive coach, and showed that in Dallas. And it's so strange that the Commanders sort of flipped from this offense that couldn't do anything but a really stout defense that kept them in games. They traded all them pieces away in people like Montez Sweat and Chase Young, and now it's flipped the script, and their offense seems to be incredibly efficient, and they're doing that in spite of the defense, but it's doing really poor. But it's really what is interesting is what you said, Johnny, earlier. Is they feel very Detroit Lions of 3 years ago, a really high-powered offense, but their defense needed a lot of work. They've got some stars on there, but they still need a lot of work. So is it sort of, they're sort of going to have to go back to the drawing board with their defense, aren't they? But does this also make how impressive Jayden Daniels has been even better?
I actually think, I think the bar was so low for the Commanders defense last year. I mean, if you remember, Sam Howell was able to, obviously, he not in the same conversation, but was able to put up, decentish numbers in terms of scoring, and the defense wasn't able to help them out at all. I think they had the worst point differential in the league last year, and allowed the most points. So even small margins after 4 games, I think we know how good Dan Quinn is at guiding a defense. Obviously, he was able to transform the Cowboys' defense over the last 3 years or so. They are already looking a little bit weaker. There's obviously a bit of a common denominator. So I think we're so early on, and I think that in this Commanders rebuild, this is obviously the first, I would say, season of that rebuild. I don't think you can count last year with obviously the coaching staff and the quarterback who was in place. They made so many changes. I really like some of the defensive players. I mean, Frankie Louvu, I think, is a really good player, and he made a couple of plays in this game against the Cardinals. And yeah, I think there's the bar, unfortunately, was so low for the Commanders defensively. I mean, I've not got any stats, but obviously, we've talked about some of the teams that they played aren't perhaps the best teams in the world, and I think they were probably going to be much bigger tests, particularly like the Ravens in 2 weeks. That will obviously be a huge test for the defense. But I think it is very early days, and I don't want to get carried away even with Jayden Daniels. But yeah, I think there are signs there that the Commanders could be really special, and I think you just need to get this defense figured out, and if it can perform with consistency, I think that's a key thing, because like you say, they had a lot of good players that they just weren't working as a unit over the last couple of years. if they can perform with consistency, then I think they'll be a real threat to this division and potentially even in the playoffs. But I mean, I think even this weekend, I think they what was it? There was a final score. They only conceded 14 points against a Cardinals team that has put up numbers to start the year. So I think there are. I'm acting really defensive for the Commanders here. But yeah, I think there are perhaps signs that they could be good. They just need to be given time, and I think a lot more coaching until that happens.
My worry really is that this is clearly going to be a project, and that Dan Quinn may be all in, but is Cliff Kingsbury going to be all in? Because Cliff Kingsbury is a very talented offensive coordinator. It didn't really work out with him in Arizona, but if this trajectory continues for the rest of the season, teams are now going to be sniffing around Cliff Kingsbury, and it may be. Yeah, that may be a bigger element of why Jayden Daniels is doing well under Kingsbury. And, it was sort of infamous in Arizona that he plays, quite loose, not incredibly stern. And I don't know if that completely works as a head coach, but it seems to be working as offensive coordinator. And, when that coaching carousel comes back around in February, March time, there may be people sniffing around him. And maybe a history of the Arizona Cardinals means that he wouldn't go, but the Commanders surely are hoping that he would stick around as well for this defense to then improve and then, have a really complementary two-side of the ball. But I mean, Jayden Daniels at the minute, the trajectory he's going to be rookie of the year, offensively wise anyway. He's going to smash that. And he might be smashing a few records as well, because he seems to be the real deal. And I mean, the Bears may be feeling a little bit put out at the minute, but you never know. I mean, there's plenty of time for both of these quarterbacks, but he seems to be playing with the difference between Caleb and him is the expectation. I think Caleb had huge expectations going to Chicago, and Chicago had huge expectations of him. I feel like the Commanders haven't exactly put the world on Daniel's shoulders, and that seems to have worked. And funny enough, hopefully other teams may do that a little bit more as well.